My name is Paris, and this year I finally turned 40. Back in my 20s, I met my husband, Damon, who was a contractor at my workplace. We got married and have enjoyed a comfortable life ever since, thanks to his hard work over the years. Let me tell you about the time we struggled the most right after we got married. I was born as the granddaughter of a landowner in a small town in Washington state. Although my grandfather owned land, he wasn't particularly impressive, but I did enjoy a fairly comfortable upbringing. As I grew older, I felt like I couldn't become a self-sufficient adult if I kept relying on my family's wealth. So determined to be independent, I chose to work for a company in Boston and moved there. I didn't tell Damon that I was a landowner's granddaughter till we decided to get married. The reason was simple. I didn't think it was necessary. I was living off my own salary without relying on my family's money. When Damon came to visit my family home, he was surprised by its size but didn't make a big deal about it. I felt reassured that his attitude didn't change after learning about my background, and we went ahead with the marriage. Had he changed his behavior, I might have called off the wedding, suspecting he was after my family's money. One day, as we were discussing our upcoming wedding, my grandfather suddenly passed away. Since we were already engaged, Damon and my mother-in-law attended the funeral. My mother-in-law suddenly said, "Isn't that Congressman Mr. Douglas?" She was referring to a politician my grandfather had been friendly with. Even though we were small-scale landowners, we had some connections in political and business circles. "Impressive, you noticed. Excuse me for a moment, I'll go say hello," I said, walking over to greet Mr. Douglas. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my mother-in-law was watching me intently, even from a distance. After the mourning period for my grandfather ended, we got married. We were enjoying the sweet atmosphere of newlywed life when something unexpected happened. "Paris, are you home?" It was my mother-in-law, and I was caught completely off guard by her sudden visit during the daytime when Damon wasn't around. "Just a second, let me get the door," I said, scrambling to open it. "Sorry for the surprise, just wanted to see how you're doing," she said with a smile. I apologized while trying to fix my disheveled hair. "I'm sorry for the way I look. Damon's not here today, he's at work." "That's fine. I actually came to talk to you. Just wanted to make sure Damon's not causing any trouble," she said. My mother-in-law asked various questions about my life with her son and if I was facing any challenges. I was relieved for a moment, glad she was understanding, but then she sipped her coffee, straightened her posture, and said, "By the way, I heard from Damon that your family in Washington owns land." I didn't expect such a question out of the blue. Still thinking it was just small talk, I answered, No, it's not like that. My grandfather just owns a little land. It's not a big deal." My mother-in-law smiled and asked, "But your family's well off, right?" Something about this made me uneasy. I managed to keep a smile and play it off. As I suspected, the conversation shifted to awkward topics like my income and whether I was getting any financial help from my family. From then on, my mother-in-law started visiting our home whenever Damon was not around. She would look around and always say, "You should ask your parents for help." This happened especially when the house was a bit untidy or after she'd taken a peek in the refrigerator. I could tell she was implying, "Why don't you hire a housekeeper? Or you should ask for grocery money." Not wanting to argue, I brushed it off each time with a laugh. Then one day, I noticed my card holder was missing. It was a small branded gift from my mom when I got my job. I'm not fond of expensive things, but I remember Mom saying, "Let me do this much for you," and I treasured it even though it was a bit worn out. I searched everywhere, drawers, bags, but couldn't find it. So casually, I asked my mother-in-law, who sometimes helps with cleaning, "Have you seen a yellow card holder?" I thought she might know because she sometimes helps me clean our house. What she said next was completely unexpected. "Oh, that, it was so lovely, I took it." I couldn't believe what was happening. Taking other people's things without asking, is that acceptable now? I briefly wondered if I'd missed some new custom, but no, that couldn't be it. "Great souvenir, thanks," she added. Why was I being thanked for something I never gave? I was so shocked I couldn't find the words. That's actually something special my mom gave me, so I can't just give it away." There was a lot I wanted to say, but I stuck to the bare minimum to make my point. Not wanting to escalate things, I tried hard to calm my racing heart and muster some semblance of respect because, after all, she is my mother-in-law. "Oh, really? That's too bad. I really liked it." "Fine, here it is back. Now give me something else." Wow, I was stumped. I couldn't believe it. I really wanted that card holder back, so I exchanged it for some organic tomatoes we'd gotten from a neighbor. She seemed unhappy with the tomatoes at first, but once I explained they were organically grown and hard to find in stores, she seemed satisfied. But it got me thinking, all those times she'd come over to help tidy up, was she actually snooping for valuables? She practically knew the contents of our entire house, and it gave me the creeps. I thought she was strange, but I hoped this would be the end of it. I decided to keep the whole ordeal to myself and never told my husband. But then she showed up again, not long after the incident. The nerve of her to come back after all that. Although I rated my annoyance, remembering she is my mother-in-law after all. Paris, let's go out for lunch today. I know a delicious place. She invited me out, which was unusual. I had a glimmer of hope that maybe she was going to apologize for the last time. But the reality was quite the opposite. As we were leaving the restaurant after an enjoyable lunch, she said, "Oh no, I forgot my wallet. Paris, can you cover for me?" To be honest, given the previous incident, I had a bad feeling about this. But I could have just not paid, so I reluctantly covered the whole bill. "Thank you, Paris," she said. Just as I expected, the money never came back. Since then, my mother-in-law often invited me to lunch, conveniently forgetting her wallet each time. I was left with no choice but to pick up the tab. She also never stopped taking things from our home. It got worse every day. "So, what's the gift for today?" she would ask, out of sheer necessity. I started preparing extra groceries and snacks to give to her. It was better than her taking things without asking, but it still felt awful. The more this went on, the harder it became to talk to my husband about it. I worried how he'd feel if he knew his mother was acting this way. Constantly supplying these gifts started to strain our finances too. It bothered me that our hard-earned money was dwindling. Finally, I found a way to cope. I started working a part-time job, giving me less time to spend with my mother-in-law. And it worked. I had significantly fewer encounters with her. Maybe I should have done this from the start. Now, I only had to deal with her during summer vacations and Christmas visits, which made life much easier. However, when we visited her for the summer vacation after a long time, her bad habits reemerged. She'd make comments like, "How have you been with your family lately?" Or, "That's a nice watch you're wearing." When my husband was away, though, I had some financial flexibility because of my part-time job. My watch was nothing special. As for my relationship with my family, it was the same as always. She had one reason for asking these questions. I realized from my long experience with her, she was fishing to see if she could get something more. "Hey, sister-in-law, long time no see. Got any gifts?" Just when I was getting fed up with my mother-in-law, I popped my jobless, live-at-home sister-in-law, Cindy. "I've brought some snacks. Feel free to have some," I said with a smile. That's when Cindy said something outrageous. "No, not like that. Your family is rich, right? Don't you have something better, like a designer bag?" She wanted a designer bag as a casual gift. I was speechless, just like when my mother-in-law made her ridiculous demands. "I'm sorry for not being more thoughtful," I said, brushing it off. I had so much I wanted to say, but I didn't want to stir up trouble during a short two-night visit. "Seriously, make sure you bring gifts next time," my sister-in-law retorted, retreating to her room and laughing as if she were in the right. She's only a few years younger than me, and her outrageous comments and actions are infuriating. But I kept my cool, reminding myself that I married into this family. Yet the lack of gifts seemed to have hardened my sister-in-law and mother-in-law against me. I realized this while helping with household chores. "You're washing those dishes wrong. You're using too much soap and wasting water," raped my mother-in-law. Confused, I was taken aback. I wash dishes like anyone else, and it's the same way I do it at the restaurant where I work part-time. If anything, I think I'm more careful here. "Well, you're from a well-off family, so I guess you're not used to household chores," she chuckled. Here I was, washing a mountain of dirty dishes she left, and she was saying I don't do housework. The audacity! I wanted to voice my displeasure but held it in. "Well, it's done now. Just pay for the soap and water later," she said. With that, she left all the chores to me and went off to watch TV. My sister-in-law was no better, demanding an allowance from me. I had no obligation to give money to an adult woman who's only 3 years younger than me. I tried to laugh it off, but she was persistent. She even opened the bathroom door while I was showering to say, "I'm waiting for my allowance." Even between women, this is unacceptable. Finally, I lost my patience and snapped. "I can't do that," I said, my self-control slipping, perhaps because she's younger. "What? How arrogant. I'll tell Mom," she retorted. and she really did report me to her mother-in-law. Under normal circumstances, a parent would scold or be dumbfounded by such behavior, but not the women in this family. How could you, Paris? Don't you find Milan adorable? I was reprimanded. Adorable? No way. But I knew they would keep blaming me until they got money. With a sigh, I gave in and handed my sister-in-law some money. Deciding it was best to avoid more conflict, I thought, I'll be going home tomorrow. So it was decided that we'd visit my in-laws again for Christmas. At that time, we had just returned from a trip to Italy for our wedding anniversary, so I thought no one would say anything more. Knowing that my mother-in-law and father-in-law would be celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary next year, I bought them a pair of Venetian glasses, each costing around $300, as a gift. Despite my ups and downs with my mother-in-law, I felt genuine in choosing these for them. For my sister-in-law, I picked out a leather bag from a popular, though not famous, Italian brand. It was a little bitter meeting their demands, but our rare trip had been enjoyable, so it didn't bother me too much. In fact, during the trip, I confided everything about my mother-in-law and sister-in-law to my husband. It felt wrong to bring it up during a fun moment, but the freeing atmosphere of our trip made me spill the beans. My husband held me and said, "I'm sorry. I'm glad you talked to me. Let me know right away if something happens again. He's truly a wonderful man. I'm glad I married him." I felt so clear-headed, but my worn feelings were about to be shattered. Crash! A loud noise rang out. Startled, I rushed to the kitchen. The Venetian glasses I had gifted were in pieces. "Oh, Paris, I'm so sorry." My hand slipped, my mother-in-law said, laughing as she spoke. Could someone's hand really slip and break both glasses? It was a lie. She did it on purpose. I couldn't help but glare at her for a moment. She hesitated but then laughed it off. They break so easily. Wow, what happened? Did it break? My sister-in-law asked, drawn in by the noise. Yes, it did. It was just an accident, my mother-in-law replied. This is not how someone who breaks a gift within hours should act. I couldn't believe the nerve of these two, laughing non-stop in this situation. Memories of past grievances flooded back. I had carefully chosen these gifts, thinking of my mother-in-law and father-in-law. I stared at the broken glasses, my heart sinking. My sister-in-law looked at me. Well, if it's such a cheap thing that breaks easily, you shouldn't have bothered. If you're wealthy, bring something high-end at least. She nodded in agreement with my mother-in-law's words. I don't need such pathetic souvenirs. Oh, wait a minute, she said, rushing back to her room. She returned with the bag I had gifted her. I was actually running out of toys for Charlie, she said, laughing as she let Charlie, the family dog, chew on the bag. In no time, the bag was in tatters, ruined by teeth and dirt. It felt like my fond memories of Italy were being torn to shreds. Tears almost filled my eyes. I won't forgive this. Fine, I'm leaving. I won't be coming back anymore, I said. Both my mother-in-law and stepsister responded with a puzzled "huh." Their mouths were still smiling, so I guess they didn't get it. No worries, let me make it clear for them. Did you hear that? I spoke into my mobile phone. Yes, I heard it all. I'm on my way, my husband replied. Upon hearing his voice, I ended the video call. In reality, he had left me alone on purpose to gather evidence of their mistreatment. I had been updating him via WhatsApp, and upon hearing a noise, he had instructed me to start a video call. The only reason I didn't break into tears was that I had a strong ally on my side. My husband arrived and immediately asked, "What's going on here?" "My glass from Paris just accidentally broke," my mother-in-law responded. Stepsister also tried to chime in. Charlie just decided to. But my husband wasn't having any of it. "Don't mess around. I saw everything. What are you doing to Paris?" At that moment, the words "doing to Paris" caught my attention as if something had been done to him too. "Well, you don't give her much money, do you? Paris is your wife. It's okay, right?" "It's her duty," my mother-in-law retorted. I was stunned. Could it be that they were mooching off my husband as well? "Mom, you and your bunch have always been messed up. Stop leeching money off your kids," my husband said, his voice firm. With his words, my suspicions turned into certainty. It turned out he'd been asked for money by his family for a long time too. Before we got married, they even created debts under his name, which he ended up paying off after marriage. The money grubbing continued, but he just didn't lend them anymore. I was truly shocked to find this out, but maybe he felt it wasn't necessary to tell me, just like I hadn't told him. I was the grandchild of a landowner. My husband probably thought it was a problem only he had to deal with and never could have imagined they'd target his wife. But now that they knew about my family's wealth, they set their sights on me too. How far would these people go to squeeze money out of others? It was disgusting. Even if they were my husband's family, they were awful. That's it, my husband raised his voice. If you're going after Paris too, then it's a different story. I'm cutting ties with this family. I'll sell off everything I bought, from cars to household items. You better find a new TV and fridge quick. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were visibly stunned, and for good reason. The only people living in their house were my retired father-in-law on a pension, my homemaker mother-in-law, and my unemployed sister-in-law. This household didn't have the means to replace the household items if they were sold. My husband and I, who worked hard and earned our own money, must have been seen as reliable support. "Let's go," said my husband, pulling my hand as we left the kitchen, but my mother-in-law and sister-in-law chased after us. "Wait, please don't abandon us. We won't ask Paris for gifts anymore." At these words, my husband stopped. "Stop making basic decency sound like a favor. It's messed up to demand money and gifts in the first place." At my husband's cold response, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law looked disheartened. Do they not understand common sense? It's almost pitiable. My husband threw them a small lifeline. "If you can write up a contract, we can reconsider." Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law looked puzzled. The agreement was straightforward, meant for someone committed to working hard, no contact or communication with me when my husband isn't around, and to pay back all the money they've borrowed so far. However, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law immediately started fighting over who would get a job to meet these terms. They didn't want their stuff sold, but neither did they want to work. Seeing this, my husband whispered to me, "Let's cut them off once they've paid us back." I never said I was reconsidering cutting ties with them. I couldn't help but laugh. I completely agreed. I didn't want to be associated with these people who had nothing better to do than rely on others. After that, we never visited my husband's family home again. Over 10 years have passed, and the financial state of my husband's family has been in shambles. Struggling to pay rent, daily expenses, and other debts, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law are working sort of, but with no qualifications or solid work experience. They're stuck in low-paying jobs or poor work environments. Given their selfish attitudes, it's no surprise they can't hold on to a job. Despite that, they don't want to give up their lavish lifestyles, so their debt keeps piling up. They keep reaching out to my husband, begging for help, but he has firmly rejected them, effectively cutting off ties. As for my husband, his diligent work has paid off, and he's climbed the corporate ladder impressively. I've quit my part-time job and returned to being a stay-at-home mom. We've had a child, and my husband has created an environment where I can focus solely on raising our kid. Now my life is as peaceful and fulfilling as when I lived with my parents, if not more so. I'm grateful for having such a wonderful husband. Your parents' achievements don't define you. Similarly, if your parents are terrible, it doesn't mean you'll turn out the same way. What matters most is your own character, no matter the circumstances you were raised in. I intend to keep growing to always be a